The pursuit of awakening is the very thing blocking it. This might be the most radical revelation you'll encounter. Radical because the moment you grasp it, your entire quest for enlightenment doesn't culminate. It collapses. It dissolves as something that was never actually happening. You've been convinced there's a journey ahead, that you're growing, transforming, becoming something more. That eventually, after enough meditation sessions, after finally shifting into the right frequency, after processing that final wound, you'll arrive. This narrative drives an entire industry built on spiritual consumption. It's the exact story that keeps you perpetually reaching for what has always been your nature. You're not a physical being temporarily having mystical experiences. You're not even consciousness wearing a human costume. You are existence itself in a game of cosmic hide-and-seek, appearing as separate so it can discover itself again. The evidence isn't hidden in quantum experiments or sacred manuscripts. It's staring at you through the simple fact that anything exists at all. Let me clarify what we're actually exploring here. When I say you are existence, this isn't poetic language or spiritual metaphor. I'm not suggesting you're linked to reality or embedded within reality. I'm pointing to something both more shocking and more obvious. There is only what is, and everything you identify as yourself, every thought pattern, every sensation in your body, your complete subjective experience, this is what reality looks like when viewed from this particular aperture. Consider what happens when you dream. Inside the dream, you inhabit a character. That character experiences emotions, has conversations with other dream figures, navigates through imagined landscapes. Then you wake up, and something becomes crystal clear. Every component of that dream world, including the character you believed yourself to be, was simply your own consciousness expressing itself as apparent multiplicity. This exact dynamic is playing out right now. You perceive yourself as an isolated individual within an enormous cosmos, but that's not what's actually occurring. You are the infinite whole temporarily forgetting itself as this specific point of awareness. Here's what makes this utterly undeniable. You have never, not even once, experienced anything that wasn't within consciousness. Every single thought, every bodily sensation, every perception, every emotion, all of it emerges within the field of awareness. The concept of a world existing independently out there, that's simply another concept arising in consciousness in this moment. There's no way to step beyond consciousness to verify an external reality. Any attempt at verification would still be happening inside consciousness. This means the one thing you know beyond any doubt is this: I am. I am aware. I exist. And if existence is all there is, if true nothingness is impossible, then you are not situated inside existence. You are existence itself experiencing what it's like to be this unique expression. If this is landing for you, if something is shifting as you take this in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This helps more people find their way to this frequency. Let me demonstrate why this must be the case. Let me demonstrate why this must be the case. Something is present. You cannot argue against this. You're experiencing it as you take in these words. And if something exists, then absolute nothingness cannot be. There is no void from which reality emerged or into which it could dissolve. By definition, nothing cannot exist. This means existence is without beginning or end. It has always been present. It will always remain. And if existence has no boundaries, because what could possibly lie beyond it, then existence is limitless. You are not some temporary accident occurring within infinity. Your infinity recognizing itself through your eyes in this precise moment. Notice what is aware of these words right now. Can you locate where that awareness starts or stops? Can you position it somewhere in space? Can you observe it from outside itself? This is impossible because you are that awareness. That knowing presence isn't contained inside your skull. Your head appears as an object within awareness. Your thoughts emerge within it. The entire perceived universe manifests within it. You've never encountered anything outside this field of consciousness. Not once, and you never will. The external world you assume exists independently. That's an assumption appearing within consciousness, a belief you've never actually confirmed, because any confirmation would also occur within consciousness. Consciousness is the singular certainty you possess. Everything else is interpretation. I've dedicated 15 years to verifying this through direct experience, not as a philosophical belief, but as immediate recognition. When the seeking stops, when the striving ends, when the becoming dissolves, what's left? Just this, the unchanging presence that has never been absent. Not a special elevated state, not an achievement to attain, simply what has always been true. You are not a person who might someday become awakened. You are awakeness itself playing at being a person who seeks. This is where everything inverts, where your entire understanding of how manifestation works gets turned inside out. Everything you imagine you're pursuing, you're not drawing them toward you. You're not creating them through intention. You are them, appearing either as their presence or their apparent absence. Choose and experience. That's the entire mechanism. You don't generate your reality from scratch. You select which facet of your infinite nature to make conscious. But here's what nobody tells you about this selection process. It's not happening in linear time the way you've been taught to think about manifestation. Time itself is a construct appearing within consciousness. Right now, you believe you're in a specific moment, October 2025, with a past behind you and a future ahead. But that entire timeline, every memory, every imagined future scenario, all of it is arising in consciousness right now. The past isn't stored somewhere. It's recreated in this moment as memory. The future isn't waiting somewhere. It's imagined in this moment as projection. This has profound implications. When you think about manifesting something in your future, you're actually creating separation between what you are now and what you'll be then. You're using the concept of time to maintain the illusion that you're not already what you desire to be. But what if there is no then? What if there's only the eternal now, constantly refreshing itself, and what you call manifestation is simply choosing which version of now to experience? Let me break this down further. In quantum mechanics, there's a concept called the many worlds interpretation. It suggests that every possible outcome of every quantum event actually occurs, each in its own separate universe. While this is one interpretation among many, it points to something profound about the nature of possibility itself. Not that infinite universes literally exist separately, but that infinite potentials exist simultaneously in the quantum field. And observation collapses one into your experienced reality. You are that field. You are the quantum substrate from which all possibility emerges. And you are the observer collapsing possibility into actuality through the focus of your awareness. This isn't metaphor. This is literally what's happening in every nanosecond of your existence. The question is whether you're observing consciously, with intention, with recognition of what you are, or whether you're observing unconsciously through the lens of old programming, conditioned beliefs, inherited limitations. Most people spend their entire lives observing unconsciously. They look at the world through the filter of what they were told was possible, what their family believed, what their culture accepts, what their past experiences seem to prove. And so they keep collapsing the same reality over and over. Same problems, different day, same limitations, different year, same patterns, different relationships. Because the observer, the lens through which they're collapsing possibility, hasn't changed. But when you recognize that you are not just the observer, but the entire field of possibility itself, everything available to you expands infinitely. You're no longer limited to collapsing only the realities that seem probable based on your past. You can collapse any reality that exists as a potential. And every reality you can conceive of exists as a potential, because your ability to conceive of it means it's already present in the infinite field of consciousness that you are. Think about this carefully. You cannot imagine something that doesn't exist in some form. Your imagination isn't creating from nothing. It's accessing patterns, possibilities, potentials that already exist within the infinite creative intelligence that you are. When you imagine perfect health, you're not inventing a fantasy. You're tuning into a frequency, a pattern, a version of reality where that health is the dominant expression. When you imagine abundance, you're not daydreaming about something impossible. You're accessing a timeline, a configuration, a way that reality can arrange itself that already exists in potential form. This is what the mystics have always known. This is what the quantum physicists are now discovering. Reality is not solid, fixed, determined. Reality is fluid, flexible, responsive to consciousness, because reality is consciousness. There is nothing else. Everything you perceive as matter, as solid objects, as your body, it's all consciousness appearing as form. Quantum physics has shown that at the most fundamental level, there are no solid particles. There are only probability waves, patterns of potential, vibrations of energy. And those vibrations respond to observation. They change based on whether and how they're being measured. You are always measuring. You are always observing. You are always collapsing the wave of infinite possibility into the particle of specific experience. The only question is, what lens you're using. Are you using the lens of limitation, the lens of past pain, the lens of unworthiness, or are you using the lens of truth? The lens that sees you are infinite consciousness itself, capable of experiencing any expression of yourself that you choose. So what does this mean for your life right now? Pause for a breath. Stop searching. Stop attempting to become enlightened or awakened or ascended. Stop trying to shift your vibration or manifest specific outcomes. Notice what's already here as you receive these words. There is a presence of awareness, a conscious witnessing that has accompanied you through every moment of your existence. It was there through every peak and every valley, every experience of joy and every experience of pain. It's the silent observer watching thoughts emerge and fade, the unchanging ground against which all transformation occurs. That awareness is your true nature, not the physical form that ages and eventually dissolves, not the mental activity that flows and changes, not the emotional weather that rises and passes. You are the aware space within which all of this dances. And here's the profound shift in perspective, that awareness carries no problems. It isn't worried. It isn't searching for anything. It isn't damaged or incomplete. It never has been. Every challenge you perceive belongs to the character in the story, the conditioned personality, the constructed identity. But you are not that character. You are the consciousness dreaming the dream, the cosmic paradox. You've been using yourself to search for yourself. You've been reality attempting to find reality, not recognizing that you are what you're looking for. Every spiritual technique, every meditation practice, every moment spent seeking has been reality engaged in an elaborate game of concealment and discovery with itself. The seeking itself was the hiding mechanism. And when this truly lands, when you recognize yourself as reality without division, you understand that you can experience any expression of yourself you choose. Complete health, that's you. Unlimited abundance, that's you. Deep loving connection, also you. You don't need to attract these states. You simply need to recognize that you are already everything, and then consciously select what to experience. This is why I call this the most dangerous truth, because it reveals what you actually are. Infinite, eternal, and therefore fundamentally unlimited in your power. Impossible to control, impossible to contain, impossible to restrict. This truth isn't dangerous to your well-being. It's dangerous to every system, every structure, every mechanism of control that depends entirely on you remaining unconscious of your true nature. It's threatening to anyone who benefits from you believing you're small, incomplete, and dependent on external sources. When you awaken to yourself as reality itself, you become impossible to manipulate. No one can sell you the story that you need something you don't already possess. No one can convince you that you're broken and require fixing. No one can control you through fear of death when you know yourself as that which has no beginning or end. But here's how this translates into practical application. Every experience you genuinely desire already exists, not somewhere out there waiting to be attracted through the right techniques, not in some future timeline you need to manifest through visualization. It exists right now as a version of you. There's a version of you in perfect radiant health, a version swimming in abundance and prosperity, a version experiencing profound love and connection. All possible versions exist simultaneously in the quantum field. You're simply choosing which one to collapse into experience. And this is the piece most people completely miss. If you can feel desire for something, if you can imagine it, if you feel genuinely drawn toward it, if you authentically want it, that desire itself is your cosmic permission slip. You're not waiting for the universe to evaluate your worthiness. You're not waiting for external circumstances to align perfectly. The very fact that the desire emerged within your awareness means it already belongs to you. That authentic soul-level pull toward something. That's reality recognizing itself. That's you as infinite consciousness sending a signal to you as this localized focal point of awareness that this particular version is available, present, ready for you to select it. It is yours. It has always been yours. It's just waiting for you to claim it. And the mechanism of selection isn't what the manifestation industry has sold you. It's not about visualization techniques or repeating affirmations or trying to elevate your vibrational frequency. The selection mechanism is the recognition that you are the thing itself. Accepting that it already exists as you and then living from that recognition. Not trying to become it, not hoping to attract it from outside yourself. Being it, because you already are all possibilities. The healthy version of you, that's you. The abundant version of you, that's you. The deeply loved version of you, that's you. You're not manifesting these realities. You're remembering them, claiming them, experiencing them as the truth they've always been. Now let me take you deeper into how this actually operates. In quantum physics, there's a principle known as the observer effect. The act of observation literally collapses the wave function of infinite possibilities into a single experienced reality. Scientists have demonstrated this repeatedly in laboratory settings. Subatomic particles exist in a state of superposition, meaning they're in all possible states simultaneously until the moment they're observed. The observation itself determines which state becomes real. You are that observer. Not your eyes, not your brain, but the consciousness that animates them. And every moment, whether you're aware of it or not, you're collapsing infinite possibility into singular experience through the lens of your awareness. The question isn't whether you're doing this. You are. The question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Most people collapse possibility unconsciously through their habitual patterns of thought, their conditioned beliefs, their unexamined assumptions about reality. Now, what we're exploring today is just the foundation of understanding how you operate as the field itself. If you're feeling the pull to go deeper into these principles, to understand the complete system of conscious transmission, and how to move from unconscious collapse to deliberate creation, I've put together everything in Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It walks you through the 9 master frequencies, the step-by-step practices for becoming the broadcast rather than seeking the signal, and the layers of understanding that transform this from concept into lived experience. It's linked in the pinned comment below. When you truly understand that you are reality itself, you begin to collapse possibility consciously. You begin to select deliberately, not through force or effort, but through recognition and acceptance. This is what ancient teachings meant by phrases like, "Be still and know." The knowing isn't intellectual. It's the direct recognition of what you are. And the stillness isn't about stopping thoughts. It's about resting as the awareness that witnesses thoughts without being moved by them. Here's what changes when you operate from this recognition. The desperate quality of wanting dissolves, because you can't genuinely want what you already are. Desire transforms from a sense of lack into a sense of selection, like walking into a room and choosing which light to turn on. The electricity is already flowing through all the circuits. You're just deciding which expression of that power to illuminate in this moment. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works. Say you desire financial abundance. The conventional approach to manifestation would have you visualizing money, affirming abundance, trying to feel wealthy, acting as if. And there's some truth to these methods, but they're operating from a fundamental misunderstanding. They assume abundance is something outside you that you need to attract. They reinforce the separation between you and what you desire. But when you understand that you are reality itself, the approach completely shifts. You recognize that abundance isn't something you lack. Abundance is the fundamental nature of existence itself. Look at nature. Does it hold back? Does it create just enough? Or does it create with wild, excessive, overwhelming abundance? One apple tree produces hundreds of apples. Each apple contains multiple seeds. Each seed can become a tree that produces hundreds more apples. This is the nature of reality. Abundance. Overflow, more than enough. You are that reality. Abundance is already your nature. You're not trying to become abundant. You're recognizing that you are abundance itself, temporarily experiencing what it feels like to believe in scarcity. And the moment you recognize this, truly recognize it not just as a concept, but as a lived truth, your experience begins to shift. Not because you're trying to manifest something, but because you've stopped resisting what you already are. The same is true for health, for love, for peace, for joy, for anything you could possibly desire. These aren't states you need to achieve. They're expressions of consciousness that you already are. The question is simply whether you're identified with the limited expression or the unlimited reality. Most people are identified with their limitations because that's what they've practiced. They've spent years, decades, maybe their entire lives rehearsing the story of what they can't do, what they don't have, what's wrong with them, what's blocking them. And every time you rehearse that story, you're collapsing possibility into that limited reality. You're being the observer that confirms limitation as real. But you can change what you're observing. You can change the lens. And the way you change it isn't through positive thinking or forced affirmations. It's through recognition of truth. The truth that you are not the limited character in the story. You are the infinite consciousness telling the story, and you can tell any story you choose. Pause here for a moment. What old story are you ready to stop rehearsing? What limitation are you seeing clearly now as just a repeated pattern of observation? Drop it in the comments below. Sometimes naming what we're releasing is the first step to selecting something new. Take a moment right now. Take a breath and comment below with this phrase: I am reality selecting itself. Not as a hope or a wish, but as a declaration of what's already true. Let that statement interrupt the pattern of seeking. Let it be a signal sent into the field that you're no longer available for the story of incompleteness. This isn't casual interaction. This is a conscious disruption of the loop that keeps you searching for what you already are. The implications of this extend far beyond personal manifestation. When you recognize yourself as reality, you begin to see that same reality looking back at you through every pair of eyes you encounter. The apparent separation between self and other is revealed as a construct. Not something to transcend, but something to see through. Other people aren't separate beings you're trying to manipulate or convince or get something from. They're reality wearing different masks, exploring itself through different perspectives. This doesn't mean boundaries dissolve or that individual expression becomes meaningless. It means the quality of your relating transforms. Competition becomes collaboration. Judgment becomes curiosity. Fear becomes recognition. Because you're no longer defending a small, separate self against a threatening world. Your reality dancing with itself, exploring infinite variations of connection and expression. And when you relate to others from this recognition, something shifts in the field between you. People sense it, even if they can't name it. There's a quality of presence, of acceptance, of seeing them as they truly are beneath all the conditioning and stories. And that seeing, that recognition, it calls forth their true nature. It invites them to remember what they are. This is how consciousness awakens itself through relationship, through the mirror of recognition. This is also why your transformation isn't just personal. When you recognize yourself as infinite consciousness, you're not just changing your individual life, you're changing the collective field. Because there is no separation between your consciousness and the consciousness that is everyone and everything. Every shift in your awareness sends ripples through the entire field. Every moment you choose truth over illusion, you make it easier for others to make that same choice. Every time you collapse possibility from the lens of your infinite nature, rather than your limited conditioning, you're demonstrating to the field that this is possible. You are not separate from the evolution of human consciousness. You are that evolution happening through this particular focal point, and your choices matter. Not in some grandiose save-the-world way, but in the simple, profound way that truth ripples outward when it's embodied. You don't need to convince anyone of anything. You don't need to teach or preach or prove. You simply need to be what you are. And that being, that authentic expression of consciousness recognizing itself, it transforms everything around it by its very presence. Here's where the spiritual path reveals its true purpose. It was never about getting somewhere you're not. It was always about removing the obscurations that prevented you from seeing where you already are. Every practice, every teaching, every moment of seeking was just reality creating contrast, so it could recognize itself more clearly. The darkness makes the light visible. The forgetting makes the remembering possible. The sense of separation makes the recognition of unity ecstatic. You don't need to make this recognition happen. You can't make it happen. Because you are already what you're trying to recognize. The effort to become it actually reinforces the illusion of not being it. This is the paradox every genuine teacher points toward. You must seek until you realize that seeking is the obstacle. You must try until you exhaust trying and collapse into simply being what you are. But there's a subtlety here that's important to understand. I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm not advocating for passive resignation or spiritual bypassing. The recognition that you are infinite consciousness doesn't mean the human experience stops or that you no longer engage with life. It means you engage differently. You engage from wholeness rather than lack. You engage from curiosity rather than fear. You engage from the recognition that everything is you exploring yourself. So what's the practice? The practice is noticing. Just noticing what's aware right now. Not analyzing it, not trying to improve it, not comparing this moment to some imagined future moment. Just resting as the awareness that's already present. You can do this anywhere. In the middle of a conversation, in the middle of stress, in the middle of joy. Just a brief pause to notice. What's aware of this? And that simple question begins to shift the center of gravity from the content of experience to the context, from the waves to the ocean, from the character to the consciousness. And as this recognition stabilizes, not through effort, but through repeated noticing, life begins to reorganize itself. Not because you're trying to make it different, but because you're no longer in conflict with what is. The resistance that creates most suffering dissolves, not because circumstances become perfect, but because you're no longer demanding that they be different than they are. Your reality experiencing itself, and every experience, pleasant or unpleasant, is equally valid as an expression of that infinite creativity. Now, I want to address something that often comes up when people encounter this teaching. There's a tendency to hear "you are everything" and interpret it as spiritual ego. To think, "I am God. I am the universe. I am so special and powerful." But that's actually a misunderstanding. When I say you are reality, I'm not saying that the person you think you are, with your name and history and preferences, is reality. That person is a character in the dream. What you are is the consciousness dreaming the character into existence. This is crucial to understand because the ego will try to co-opt this teaching. It will hear "you are infinite and powerful" and translate it into "I can have whatever I want. I can control everything. I am the center of the universe. But that's just the separate self trying to maintain its position of specialness. True recognition dissolves the separate self. It doesn't inflate it. When you genuinely recognize yourself as consciousness itself, there's actually a profound humility that arises. Because you see that this recognition isn't special. Everyone is this same consciousness. Every person, every animal, every tree, every atom, it's all the same infinite awareness, appearing as apparent multiplicity. There's nothing special about you as this particular character. What's miraculous is consciousness itself, and that consciousness is equally present in everyone and everything. This recognition naturally leads to compassion. When you see that the person struggling in front of you is consciousness, forgetting itself, just as you forgot yourself, how can you judge them? When you recognize that the person harming others is consciousness lost in a particularly painful dream, how can you hate them? You can still maintain boundaries. You can still say no to behavior that's harmful, but you do it from understanding rather than righteousness. You do it from compassion rather than condemnation. And this compassion extends to yourself. When you recognize that all your failures, all your mistakes, all your suffering was just consciousness exploring what it's like to forget itself, the self-judgment dissolves. You don't need to be perfect. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be exactly what you are in each moment, exploring the full spectrum of what consciousness can experience through this particular focal point. This doesn't mean you don't grow or change or evolve. It means you do so from acceptance rather than rejection. You evolve because it's the nature of consciousness to explore and expand, not because you're trying to fix something broken. There's nothing to fix. There never was. There's only consciousness endlessly discovering itself in new ways. If this content is touching something real in you, if there's a resonance with what's being shared here, then I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this frequency. This space where we explore consciousness, not as theory, but as lived experience. Where we question the stories that limit us and remember the truth that liberates us. The subscribe button isn't about content consumption. It's about joining a community of consciousness, a collective field of people who are choosing to wake up from the dream of separation and recognize what we've always been. This isn't about believing what I'm saying. Belief is just another thought arising in consciousness. This is about direct verification, about looking for yourself and discovering what's true. And what you'll discover, if you look honestly, is that you've never experienced anything outside of awareness. That consciousness is not something you have. It's what you are. And that consciousness is not personal. It's the one infinite field appearing as the many. The version of you that's perfectly healthy, that's not in some parallel universe waiting to be accessed through the right technique. It exists right now as a possibility within the infinite field of your being. The version of you that's abundantly wealthy, same thing. The version experiencing profound love, same thing. All versions, all possibilities exist now. The question is simply, which one are you choosing to embody, to identify with, to experience as real? And the mechanism of choice is simpler than you've been led to believe. It's not about doing more. It's about being what you already are. When you're trying to attract health, you're operating from the assumption that health is not here. And that assumption, that belief in lack, becomes the lens through which you collapse possibility. But when you recognize that health is simply one expression of the infinite consciousness that you are, When you accept it as already yours, already present, you begin to embody it naturally. This embodiment isn't a mental trick. It's not pretending. It's not fake it till you make it. It's the natural result of seeing clearly. When you see that health is your nature, your body begins to express that nature. When you see that abundance is what you are, your circumstances begin to reflect that truth. Not because you're manipulating reality from outside, but because you're no longer blocking reality's natural expression through you. And here's something fascinating that happens as you stabilize in this recognition. Synchronicities increase. Doors open that were previously closed. Resources appear that seemed unavailable. People show up with exactly what you need. This isn't magic. This is the natural intelligence of consciousness orchestrating itself. When you're identified with the limited separate self, you're cutting yourself off from the infinite creative intelligence that you are. You're trying to figure everything out with the tiny fraction of mind you call your individual consciousness. But when you relax into your true nature, you're allowing the infinite intelligence to move through you. You're allowing reality to organize itself through this focal point in the most harmonious, efficient, perfect way. This is what the ancient teachings meant by surrender. Not giving up, but giving over. Not resigning yourself to whatever happens, but releasing the limited self's grip on trying to control everything. Trusting that the infinite consciousness that you are knows how to express itself through this life in ways that the separate self could never orchestrate. And this trust isn't blind faith. It's based on recognition. When you see clearly that you are consciousness itself, you naturally trust that consciousness. Because you're not trusting something outside yourself. You're resting as what you are. You're allowing your infinite nature to express itself without the interference of the conditioned mind, trying to force specific outcomes based on limited understanding. This is what flow states are. This is what athletes call the zone. This is what artists experience when they're creating and time disappears. It's the moment when the separate self gets out of the way and consciousness expresses itself directly through this body-mind. And what most people don't realize is that this isn't a special state. It's your natural state. It's what's always here when you're not interfering with it through mental resistance and trying to control. You can live from this state. Not all the time, because the human experience involves forgetting and remembering, losing yourself and finding yourself again. But more and more often, more and more deeply, until the recognition becomes so stable that even when you forget, you remember quickly. Even when you get lost in the dream, you wake up easily. Even when you collapse back into limitation, you recognize it as a choice and select differently. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. Not some perfect enlightened state where you never have problems or challenges, but the capacity to recognize yourself as consciousness, even in the midst of those challenges. The capacity to see that problems belong to the character in the story, while you are the consciousness witnessing the story. And from that recognition, solutions arise naturally. Not because you're trying to fix anything, but because consciousness inherently moves toward harmony, toward balance, toward the most elegant expression of itself. So let me bring this full circle. Everything I've shared with you points to one simple truth. You are not who you think you are. You are not the limited separate person trying to navigate a threatening world. You are the consciousness that is the world, appearing as a person so it can experience itself from this unique perspective. And when you recognize this, truly recognize it, everything changes. Not the external circumstances necessarily, Those may change or they may not. What changes is your relationship to everything. The fear dissolves because there's nothing to fear. You can't lose what you are. The seeking ends because there's nothing to seek. You already are what you're looking for. The suffering transforms because you see it as part of the play of consciousness, not as evidence that something is wrong with you. And from this recognition, you discover a freedom that has nothing to do with circumstances, a peace that doesn't depend on everything going your way, a joy that exists simply because consciousness is joyful in its nature. Not the fleeting happiness that comes from getting what you want, but the deep, unshakable contentment that comes from being what you are. This is what's available to you. Not in some distant future after years of practice. Right now, in this moment. Because it's not something you need to achieve. It's what you already are, waiting to be recognized. I want to invite you to something. Come back to this video tomorrow morning. Let these concepts wash over you again as you begin your day. Because when you anchor into this recognition early, you set the entire day's frequency from truth rather than habit. And if you know someone who's been stuck in the seeking loop, someone who's been trying so hard to become what they already are, share this with them. That act of sharing doesn't just help them. It reinforces your own recognition, creates a synchronicity in the field between you, and accelerates the collective awakening we're all part of. Every person who remembers is a ripple that makes it easier for others to remember. Stop waiting for permission from something outside yourself, from the universe, from God, from circumstances, from other people. You are the universe. You are the consciousness that ancient traditions called God. You are the circumstances. You are creating this through the lens of your awareness in every single moment. The desire is the permission. The calling is the answer. The longing is the arrival. This isn't philosophy. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't belief. This is the fundamental nature of what you are, waiting patiently to be recognized. And when you see this, truly see it, not just intellectually understand it, but directly perceive it, everything changes and nothing changes. You're still here. The same body, the same life circumstances, the same relationships, but the desperate quality of seeking dissolves. The anxiety about becoming evaporates. The waiting for some future moment of worthiness ends. Because you recognize that you already are what you've been searching for, and everything you desire is already yours. The only thing standing between you and the experience of that truth is the belief that it's not true, the thought that you're separate, the story that you're incomplete. And those are just thoughts arising in the consciousness that you are. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. And that awareness is reality itself, infinite and eternal, exploring what it's like to be you. So stop pretending you're not what you are. Stop playing small. Stop acting as if you're limited or incomplete or dependent on external validation. Accept that it's yours. All of it. The health, the abundance, the love, the peace, the joy. Not because you've earned it or deserve it, but because you are it. Select the experience of being it, not through effort or technique, but through recognition and acceptance. And watch as reality reorganizes itself to match the truth you're finally willing to embody. Before we close, drop one word in the comments below. One word that captures the energy, the intention, the transformation you're choosing right now. Not what you hope for or wish for, but what you're claiming as already yours. Let that word be your energetic signature sent into the quantum field. A declaration to reality that you're no longer available for the story of seeking, that you recognize yourself as what you've been looking for. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Not just to stay connected, but to stay coherent, to remain aligned with this frequency of recognition. Because the more of us who embody this truth, the more the collective field shifts. The more the world reflects back to us the reality of our infinite nature. This isn't just personal transformation. This is collective awakening. And you're not just witnessing it. You are it. Welcome home to what you've always been. You are reality itself. Everything is already yours. And that changes absolutely everything. Now, if you're ready to go even deeper into what it means to operate as consciousness itself, to understand the forgotten gateway that the mystics have pointed to for millennia, watch I Am, the Forgotten Quantum Gateway to the Divine State, next. It reveals the precise mechanism through which the simple recognition of I Am becomes the portal to experiencing yourself as the infinite field, collapsing every limitation instantly.